This video is brought to you by the Ridge wallet, the minimalist wallet with RFID blocking technology, a lifetime warranty, and a 45-day no questions asked money-back guarantee. So this is the Pixel 4, initially released back in October of 2019. This phone was a little bit divisive on release. On the surface, it almost looked like a step back, especially from the Pixel 3 XL, but after using it for a while, this is probably one of my favorite Android phones I've ever used. But should you consider buying one in 2021? Let's find out. First off, as always, we have the specs. The Pixel 4 features an octa-core Snapdragon 855 processor, 6GB of RAM, which is still, to this day, a pretty nice size. And as always, we are going to be talking more about performance later on, but for the time being, it's available in either 64 or 128GB of internal storage. And while this is plenty for me personally, I would have personally liked to see a 256GB or bigger internal storage size. This is because a lot of people like that larger internal storage size, and while 128GB is plenty for me, I know there are people out there who want more, so do bear this in mind when you're checking out this phone. It weighs in at 162 grams, which isn't the heaviest phone I've ever used, but it's also not the lightest. In fact, this thing feels pretty much just right. And it comes in with multiple color options, with clearly white, which is the one I own, just black, and oh so orange. I think Google's color names might actually be my favorite. As for key specs, that's it. Now, of course, we are going to be discussing a couple more specs later on in terms of like the battery size and screen resolution, but those each have their own respective sections, so we'll discuss those then. But for now, how's the build quality? Now, the design on this one is, of course, down to personal preference. However, I personally love this phone. The Gorilla Glass 5 back makes this thing feel really nice in the hand with an almost frosted feel to it. And despite the step back from the previous Pixel designs with a notch on the 3XL, and of course, notchant here, that's my new phrase, notchant. I really like this phone. That said though, despite the front and back both being Gorilla Glass 5, I would, as always, still recommend keeping a case on it. It does feature an IP68 water resistance rating, so your phone will survive in up to 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes. And while there is this piece of plastic that runs around the screen, the build quality of this phone is mostly excellent. You know who else has products with excellent build quality? The sponsor of this video, the Ridge wallet. This video is once again brought to you by the lovely people over at the Ridge wallet. If you don't know who the Ridge are, they make these gorgeous minimalist wallets, and these wallets aren't just slick looking. Thanks to the durable material, each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty, which is honestly one of my favorite things about Ridge wallets. I love products that are built to last, and there's also variety. There's over 30 different colors and styles to choose from, including but not limited to carbon fiber and burnt titanium. And the Ridge team is so confident that you will like your new wallet that they give you a 45-day test drive period. So if you don't love your new wallet, then you can send it back for a full refund. If you're interested in getting one of these, thanks to the Ridge's current holiday sale, until December the 7th, if you use code BUB at checkout or follow the link at the top of the description or in the pinned comment, then you can get 15% off your new Ridge wallet. After the 7th, you can still get 10% off with my code. And once again, a huge thank you to the Ridge for sponsoring this video. Next up, we have the screen, and while again it doesn't feature either a notch or the dot like we saw on the Pixel 4a, this is still definitely a good quality screen. It's 5.7 inches, which I think is a really nice size for a phone screen, POLED, 90Hz with a resolution of 1080 by 2280. Using this screen is an absolute pleasure. Everything feels nice and smooth thanks to that refresh rate, and while it's not the highest resolution phone I've ever used, this thing is still pretty damn impressive, and it's certainly good enough for me. It does also feature HDR technology, so you can get some of that nice HDR content, and little things like the always on display really make this phone nice to use. So while this certainly wasn't a case of cramming everything into a phone screen, in my experience, the phone screen does work really well. It's bright enough for all environments I used it in, and I never found myself wanting more in any other departments. Contrast, resolution, all good. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this screen. After this, we have the button layout, which at first glance looks a bit basic, with a single orange, nice touch, lock button, a volume up and down bar, and while I typically do prefer separate volume buttons along with a lock button being isolated, so you can easily press it and you don't accidentally perform any other functions, buttons do feel nice and tactile, so you can either mute your phone or take a screenshot. But the thing that most stands out for me is definitely the squeeze for Google Assistant. So while this isn't technically a button layout thing, I didn't really know where else to put this in the video, so I initially wrote this off as a gimmick. I didn't think it was going to be all that useful, but I constantly find myself squeezing the phone instead of using the Hey Google voice command. So I honestly think this is a pretty cool feature. Overall, while there are definitely some shortcomings in terms of the button layout, at least to my personal preference, in terms of actual button performance and functionality, everything works great. Moving on to how we unlock this phone, the Pixel 4 uses a face unlock technology, and while I typically haven't always been too impressed with the face unlock options on Android, my experience with the Pixel 4 was pretty great. I never found myself having to type in my password or the phone recognizing someone else instead of me, which was really nice and quite refreshing compared to some other phones that I've used in the past. I'm not going to mention it. I'm going to do a review without talking about the Samsung S8. Overall, it works well in all lighting conditions. It's accurate, it's fast. Can't really ask for much more. After this, we have one of my favorite things to talk about when it comes to smartphones, the camera. The Google Pixel 4 features a dual camera system with a 12.2 megapixel f1.7 wide-angle camera, as well as a telephoto 16 megapixel f2.4 camera. That's a first, a higher resolution telephoto camera. We also, of course, got the front-facing camera with a resolution of 8 megapixels and an aperture of f2. Alright, so specs are, of course, all well and good, but how does this thing actually perform? Well, to be truthful, I've always enjoyed taking photos on the Google Pixel side of things. I've always found that the interface is nice and user-friendly while still allowing you to get excellent shots, and the Pixel 4 is no exception. I really love the colors, dynamic range, and the sharpness that I was able to get out the Pixel 4. And while it certainly doesn't look as good as some of the modern offerings that you can get today, I think for most people, the camera on the Pixel 4 is certainly good enough. I certainly haven't felt the need to go back to anything a bit more high-end in my time using this phone. It does also feature a portrait mode, which I personally love, not just on this phone, but on any phone that has a portrait mode, so long as it works well. And luckily, in my experience, the portrait mode on the Pixels has always been excellent. It does need to be said that it can only be used on the standard lens, which is a little bit of a shame, but it's so accurate and the autofocus works so well in this mode, I'm willing to overlook it. And I've had a lot of fun taking photos in portrait mode. The Pixel 4 also does feature night sight, which is, as always, a very nice feature to have. And not only is it available on the main camera, you can also use it on the selfie camera. And while it certainly does work better on the main camera, it's nice that we at least have the option to use it. Speaking of the selfie camera, it's fine. It takes selfies. Its dynamic range and colors are nice. It's 8 megapixels. Takes nice selfies. That's it. Other features like being able to customize your grids as well as raw photo options make using the Pixel 4 for taking photos an excellent phone. But what about video? Well, the main camera shoots 4K at up to 30 FPS, and while 60 FPS would have certainly been nice, even at this time period, this was being done on the iPhone side of things. You do still get some nice dynamic range, the colors look good, but as usual, the footage is here, so you can judge for yourself. You also do get 1080p slow motion in up to 240 FPS, and while this certainly doesn't look great, it is fine for some fun slow motion. In terms of the front-facing camera, we have 1080p at up to 30 FPS, which is a little bit subpar even for this time period. I would have liked to see at least 60 FPS, but it's still fine for some casual vlogging action. Unless you know, like 4K. Overall, it is quite clear here that the photo performance vastly outperforms the video performance. And while the video is certainly good enough, I would have liked a little bit more, whereas on the photo side, I am very satisfied. Next up, we have OS and app performance, which is objectively one of the most important parts of a modern smartphone. The Pixel 4 I have here is currently running Android 12, and it's also going to get Android 13, as according to Google, it will get updates until at least October 2022. But if you are planning on keeping this phone for a really long time, then you should keep this in mind. Scrolling through the OS, performing system functions, and just using the phone in general all still do feel very good. I do think some of this is down to that nice screen, but it's good that the phone can keep up. In terms of more intensive performance, watching videos on this phone is, again, a pleasure. With most modern smartphones, I've never really had any issues playing 4K videos, and in terms of playing games, well, it's not the newest or the highest spec phone out there. It is certainly good enough for some gaming, and that 90Hz refresh rate screen, that is a really hard combination of words, is certainly a nice addition in this regard. Obviously, if you are a really competitive mobile gamer, then you probably will want something a little bit more high spec. For someone like me though, who very rarely plays games on my phone and just likes a good, stable experience, the Pixel 4 has been fantastic. Going back to the hardware quickly, this thing obviously does have internal speakers, but it doesn't have a headphone jack, and the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is because I have a friend who bought this phone, and he didn't expect it to not have a headphone jack. So while I'm not really bothered by this, I know some people are, so I did want to make you guys aware of that. In terms of the actual speakers though, it does feature stereo speakers, and for casual listening, the Pixel 4 should do just fine. However, in terms of how it compares to more modern smartphones, it's not quite as good. Finally, as always, we have the battery life. The Pixel 4 features a battery size of 2,800 mAh, and in both mine and my friend's experience using our phones, it does always get us both through the day. However, as this is no longer sold new, you probably will want to check that the battery is in good condition before you pick one of these up. While it's not quite as good as something like an iPhone 11 or a Pixel 4a, the battery life is good enough for me, and things like adaptive preferences do help to keep your battery in good health for longer. Overall, while it's not perfect, with some of its flaws being more obvious than others, as I said at the start of this video, I personally really enjoy using this phone. And I don't really know why. I think it's basically pretty much everything I want out of a Google Pixel. It's a good size, it's got lots of interesting features, and while I would prefer better video features, the user experience, in my opinion, is an absolute treat. So, if all this sounds good with you, and you're okay with buying a used phone, then maybe check this one out. Alternatively, if you don't want to buy a used phone, then I probably would recommend checking out the Pixel 4a. Alright guys, so that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know, by the way, what do you think of this phone? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you own it? Are you watching this video on it? Feel free to let me know in the comments. I always enjoy reading those. Once again, a huge thank you to the Ridge Wallet for sponsoring this video. I also want to give a huge thank you to my generous patrons who help support these videos. As for now though, as always, thank you for watching. Remember to like the video if you want to see more content like this, and smash that subscribe button. I'm done for now, and I will see you guys in the next one.